born January 15th, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. I adopted the name Martin Luther after my father in honor of a German Protestant leader. I was an American pastor, humanitarian, and a leader in the African-American civil rights movement. I led the Montgomery boycott in 1959 and helped found the Southern Christian Leadership Conference of 1957 and then became its first president. I faced years and years of racism, years and years of being attacked by hoses and dogs and of being arrested. And even through that entire struggle, I still find the good in seeing the future when all races will be able to live together hand in hand. You see, because I have a dream. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon of light, of hope to millions of Negro slaves who have been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to the end of the night of their long captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the Negro life is still sadly crippled by manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languishing in the corners of American society and finds himself exiled in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of the Republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to follow here. This note was a promise to all men, yes, black men, as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note, insofar as their citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check that has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And so we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We've also come to this hollow spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take time, the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real promises of the democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark, desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963, this is not the end, but the beginning. And those who hope that the Negro needed to blow off some steam and will now be content, well, they will have a rude awakening. If this nation returns to business as usual, there will neither be rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But there's something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining a rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on a high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to majestic heights and meet the physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to distrust of all white people. For many of you can see our white brothers here today. By the present, and have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny, and that they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone, and as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is a victim of unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in motels of the highways and hotels of cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We cannot be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs that saying, for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and the Negro in New York believes he has nothing to which to vote. No. We are not satisfied. We will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here from great trials and tribulations. Some of you come fresh from narrow jail cells. And some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom has left you battered by storms of persecution and staggered by winds of police brutality. We have been veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana and go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, and so even though we face difficulties of the day and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day the nation will be rise up and live out the true meaning of this creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day when the Red Hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and sons of former slaveholders will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state of sweltering heat of injustice, the sweltering heat of oppression will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation will not be judged by the color, but also by the content of their character. I have a dream. I have a dream that one day in Alabama with this vicious racist with the governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and little white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted and every hill shall be made low and rough places will be made plain. And crooked places will be made straight. And glory of the Lord shall be revealed in all flesh. We shall see it together. This is our hope. And this is the faith I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will hew every mountain of despair, stone of home. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we'll be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up together, for freedom together, knowing that one day we will be free. And this will be the day when God's children will be able to sing the new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride from every mountainside. Let's freedom ring. And if America is to be the great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the Protestant tops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the high Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. And let freedom ring from the snow-capped mountains of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that. Let freedom ring from the Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from the Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. And let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, we will let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state to every city. We will be able to speed up that day when all God's children, black men, white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics will be able to join in hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.